When Heisuke stopped moving entirely, Kumanomi smiled and remarked that finally, that little turd was dead. With that, she and her masked companion began to walk away, stating it was time to go after Sakamoto. Kumanomi then ordered him to find a car. But as they were leaving, Heisuke's head suddenly twitched. He managed to rise again. The masked man turned around just in time to see him opening fire in their direction. However, the masked man effortlessly blocked all the bullets using only the palm of his hand. Despite his critical injuries, Heisuke forced himself to stand and declared that they weren't going anywhere. Kumanomi, visibly irritated, asked what that was all about. The masked man explained that Heisuke had blasted off his skin. He revealed that he had armor implants beneath his epidermis, a standard modification in the pro wrestling world. Kumanomi grew even more annoyed, frustrated that Heisuke was still refusing to give up. She said this guy was a massive headache. But as she prepared to counterattack, she began to wonder what Heisuke was aiming at. That's when she noticed it. Heisuke had targeted a square billboard perched high above them on a nearby building. The metal supports snapped, and the entire structure came crashing down toward Kumanomi and the masked man. They leapt out of the way just in time to avoid being crushed. Nearby, a man driving down the road noticed the commotion and commented that it looked like there was an accident ahead. He was startled when the masked man suddenly appeared in front of his car. Heisuke narrowly dodged as the masked man hurled the car toward him with full force. He flipped backward to target him. He then noticed something from the ground and scooped it up. Then, he loaded it into his rifle. Watching him carefully, Kumanomi said that whatever he was planning, it would be pointless. She then activated her robotic arm and used it to launch the car behind Heisuke in an attempt to hit him from behind. The magnetic force was so powerful that even the masked man was struck by flying metal debris. Heisuke took a step toward the masked man's back, which caught him off guard. The masked man questioned why he had moved behind him, and as Heisuke raised his rifle, he reminded him that the weapon wouldn't work on him. But this time, something unexpected happened. The masked man was blown back, bullets having pierced through multiple parts of his body. Kumanomi was stunned by what she saw. Bleeding heavily, the masked man couldn't accept what just happened. He insisted it was impossible. That kind of damage shouldn't be possible against his body. He demanded to know what kind of bullets Heisuke had used. Heisuke calmly answered that they were just ordinary bullets, but he had mixed in small steel scraps. Looking down at the ground, the masked man saw what he meant. Scattered screws and metal fragments littered the area. He cursed under his breath as he realized that Heisuke had used Kumanomi's magnet to turbocharge his shooting power. The positioning had been perfect to make it work. Heisuke admitted that he had been waiting for Kumanomi to use her magnet in alignment with the wrestler. Kumanomi didn't expect this and simply called him a little maggot before angrily kicking him out of frustration. In his mind, Heisuke thought the plan had worked, and he was genuinely pleased he'd pulled it off. However, he also accepted that this might be the end for him. Just then, Heisuke approached, carrying his weapon. Heisuke apologized, explaining that he couldn't even lift his arm anymore. Even from that distance, he doubted he'd be able to shoot her. But Heisuke continued to bring the rifle closer. Looking through the scope of the rifle, his eyes widened when noticed something on the highway. It was Lu being held at gunpoint by a police officer while handcuffed. With no apparent way out, Heisuke grew deeply concerned for Lu's safety. The sight reignited his will to act, and he adjusted his aim to help her. Taking position, he pointed his rifle toward Lu's direction, and in the process, his shot grazed Kumanomi's ear as the latter was partially in the way. It was an incredible shot. Heisuke had successfully hit the police officer confronting Lu. The officer hadn't anticipated the shot and was completely stunned when his hand exploded, causing him to scream in pain. The impact shattered the cuffs, allowing Lu to escape. He asked what had just happened. As Lu scanned the surroundings, she wondered who had saved her. Heisuke, overwhelmed with emotion, nearly teared up. Hearing what he had to say, Heisuke felt deeply satisfied. Blood trickled from Kumanomi's ear as she asked curiously what he was so happy about. Suddenly, Heisuke was struck by a traffic sign that pierced his body. In response, Kumanomi called him a loser and claimed that it had been his last chance to kill her. Unable to move, Heisuke was ready to accept the inevitable counterattack, but someone unexpected arrived to intervene. Kamehite stepped in and blocked Komanomi's strike. He greeted Heisuke and remarked how impressive he had been. Heisuke was shocked to see him. Kamehite mentioned that the shot covered a distance of 8.2 kilometers, which meant Heisuke had just broken his world record. Heisuke still couldn't fully grasp the fact that Kamehite had shown up. However, Kamehite immediately noticed he was covered in blood and became concerned that he might already be on the brink of death. He couldn't believe that even in such a condition, Heisuke had managed to hit a target from that distance. Heisuke admitted it, but told him not to worry about it anymore. He simply thanked him for coming to help. Kamehite, however, couldn't accept his "never mind that" response. To him, it sounded like Heisuke was brushing off the fact that he had just broken his world record. But Heisuke denied that was what he meant. He didn't even know the actual distance in the first place. That triggered Kamehite even more, since it meant Heisuke had pulled it off unconsciously. He commented bitterly that maybe their friendship was a joke, then called him a bastard as he shoved the tip of his rifle into him, leaving Heisuke confused. Meanwhile, Kumanomi used the moment of distraction to launch another attack. Using her magnetic glove, she tore up the railway track from across the area. Cracks formed as her ability took effect, and the entire rail line rose into the air. Just then, a train was approaching, and she redirected its path, launching the entire train in the direction of Heisuke and Kamehite. Luckily, Kamehite was able to carry Heisuke out of the way in time to avoid it. Frustrated, Kumanomi shouted, asking why all the order members kept siding with weaklings. As she advanced, she said she once knew someone who lost his life for such a cause. The comment shook Heisuke because he knew exactly who she was referring to, Hyo and himself. Kumanomi launched another wave of metal objects toward them, forcing Kamehite to dodge. Annoyed, Kamehite remarked that she was truly a pain to deal with. Heisuke, on the other hand, stood frozen, thinking to himself that he wouldn't be able to handle it if Kamehite ended up dying because of him. He took a moment to think carefully before telling Kamehite to leave and run away from there. Kamehite was caught off guard by the remark and cursed under his breath. He pointed his rifle at him and asked if Heisuke really expected him to just stop being his friend over something like that. Was it all because he had said their friendship might be a joke? He called him annoying, then kicked him in frustration. Just as the masked man threw a punch, he missed Heisuke entirely and struck the ground instead. Heisuke urged Kamehite not to worry about him, insisting he was fine. Upon hearing that, the masked man voiced his disgust toward those called heroes, saying they make him sick because they sacrifice themselves. As he prepared to punch again, Kamehite shot him from below, causing the masked man to collapse, coughing up blood from the impact. While that happened, Kumanomi charged in from behind. Though Kamehite had his back turned, he sensed the movement and managed to block the attack using his rifle. Kumanomi grabbed the rifle and pulled, but Kamehite countered by landing a strike on Kumanomi's neck, something that clearly caught her off guard. Kumanomi remarked that apparently he wasn't just a sniper, but Kamehite asserted that true friends should be able to trust each other. He then pulled back and swung the sniper rifle hard, slamming it down onto Kumanomi's head and knocking her to the ground. Seeing that, Heisuke thought to himself that Kamehite was strong even without relying on his rifle. There was no doubt, he truly was impressive. But then Heisuke suddenly winced in pain. Kamehite became alarmed upon seeing him fall to his knees, realizing just how critical his condition had become. Meanwhile, Kumanomi was far from finished. Using her electromagnetic glove, she weaponized a screw and warned them not to underestimate her. She launched the screw toward the fallen Heisuke, but Kamehite managed to block it just in time. It struck the tip of his rifle instead, shattering it from the force. Kamehite was worried, as Heisuke had already lost consciousness. Kumanomi declared that this was what happened when one failed to choose their allies wisely. Of course, he should sever ties with anyone who dragged him down. He dismissed her views and couldn't believe where she's at. But Kamehite admitted that he used to feel the same way. Kumanomi was puzzled by that statement. Kamehite went on to say he really believed he was stronger alone. Every person on Earth is deadweight, but friendship couldn't be measured that way. Anyone who worried about something as trivial as that would never understand the greatness of Heisuke. Veins bulged from Kumanomi's head in fury as she insisted that Kamehite was the one who didn't understand. She claimed that the two of them were now just unarmed snipers. Could Kamehite not see the situation they were in? This prompted Kamehite to ask what exactly she meant. He responded that he knew everything about this, inside and out. For instance, he noted that today was a Monday, and the time was exactly 10:03 and 7 seconds a.m. The sky was clear, humidity sat at 32%, and the wind was moving at 1.5 meters per second from the northeast. In other words, they had perfect conditions. He added that a weather helicopter was flying directly above them. At this moment, he said she was going to die. He raised his finger and pointed upward, and at that very instant, Heisuke had already awoken and was now standing, holding his rifle, aiming it upward. Kamehite then asks his partner if he gets him too. At that cue, Heisuke fired toward the sky, hitting the helicopter flying overhead. Smoke began to billow from it, and it started to wobble in the air, causing Kumanomi to become visibly alarmed. She wondered to herself what on earth that punk was planning. Meanwhile, Pisuki caught the weather reporter who had fallen out of the damaged helicopter. The reporter exclaimed in awe, realizing she had been rescued by a bird. Back on the ground, Kamehite declared that the entire world was a rifle in his hands. The helicopter crashed, colliding with the tunnel near them. Kumanomi watched helplessly as the upper part of the tunnel collapsed upon impact, which triggered a violent swirl of wind inside. The resulting blast of air surged outward through the tunnel's mouth, sweeping Kumanomi, several cars, and even nearby poles into the open air. Kumanomi was left in disbelief that they had somehow turned the tunnel into a massive air cannon. Now, Kamehite asked if she could finally see what the power of friendship could do. At that moment, a faint smile formed on the edge of Heisuke's lips. Back on the highway, the police officer was finally taken down and tied up on the ground. Granny Mia asked Lou if she was all right, and she replied that she was. In her thoughts, she still couldn't figure out where that shot had come from. Could it have been Heisuke? She hoped he was okay, along with their boss Shin, Aoi, and Hana. Meanwhile, the tunnel and the bridge on the opposite side were completely destroyed after the chopper crashed into them. Both Kumanomi and the masked man lay sprawled on the ground. Heisuke let out a sigh of relief, realizing they had done it. He said to Taro and Hyo that they had succeeded. On the side, Kamehite was still stunned. Heisuke had proven that he wasn't just a long-distance shooter. He also had the sharpshooter instincts to use the environment at the same level as Kamehite himself. Impressed, he told him he should consider joining the order. However, due to extreme fatigue and his injuries, Heisuke slowly collapsed. Kamehite grew concerned. He had lost too much blood. He said he needed to take him to a hospital immediately. Lifting him onto his back, he asked the people blocking the road to move. When Heisuke opened his eyes, he was shocked to see a massive crowd of people, protesters waving flags bearing X's logo. He looked up to confirm if it really was X's mark. Tapping the man beside him, he asked who those people were. The man seemed surprised that he didn't know, saying Japan had completely gone mad. Those were supporters of the new JA. Heisuke was stunned by what he heard. One of the protest leaders shouted through a megaphone that he had killed his scumbag boss at work. He declared that he was done getting stepped on. "Long live Master X," he cried. Another protester added that guns were for justice, that they protected the powerless, and said she supported the new JA. Others claimed that the JA gave hope to marginalized people, and that, as citizens, they had the right to bear arms. They praised Master X as the best. Heisuke couldn't believe what he was hearing. The man beside him added that all those people had found salvation through the 3 bullets. Heisuke couldn't accept it. He yelled out, asking what was wrong with all of them. He said they were going insane, and that the new JA was nothing but a group of murderers. Then the man opened his shirt, revealing that he too was an X supporter. Heisuke was shocked to see X's mark on his shirt. In response, Kamehite smacked him across the face with his rifle and told him that his shirt was in extremely poor taste. He then pulled Heisuke using his rifle and told him to forget about those losers. He said he urgently needed treatment, otherwise he was going to die. In Heisuke's mind, he still couldn't believe everything that had just happened, especially since they had finally taken down one of X's lackeys. And if this continued, he feared Japan would be finished. On the news, an announcer declared that following the sudden deactivation of the guns distributed under Japan's new system, one that granted citizens the right to bear arms, riots had erupted throughout the country. Public safety was now at an all-time low. Footage of chaos and violence from various parts of Japan was broadcasted. This news was being watched from inside the JCC, where Natsuki and the others, including Torimaru, were present. Torimaru was deeply concerned. She couldn't believe the kind of havoc that had resulted from the disarming the guns. Natsuki, however, thought this might have been X's true intention all along. When someone asked what he meant, he explained that even without guns, there were countless ways for people to become violent. The guns had simply acted as a spark, triggering the violence already buried deep within people. Amane was quietly pondering those words. When Kaji asked what was on his mind, he answered that the situation in Japan now reminded him of how he used to be. Everyone under X's spell would lose themselves. But when it happened to him, it was Sakamoto and his friends who stopped him. So now, it was their turn to stop the others. While they were talking, Sheena and her older brother had already wandered close by. Sheena commented that the bathroom there was amazing. Her brother agreed and added that the JCC really spared no expense. Sheena then asked if he'd seen the cafeteria, noting that the food looked absolutely delicious. Excited, her brother said they should check it out after they finished their task. Sheena was all smiles as she shared that the facility even had a poison department. Wasn't that wild? She said they didn't have anything like that at Kansai Academy. She asked if he wanted to check it out later. Her brother wasn't sure, wondering aloud if it was even okay for them to be wandering around like that. Natsuki and the others overheard the conversation. Torimaru grew curious. Who were they? And why were they speaking in Kansai dialect? It seemed they weren't part of the JCC. Amane grew concerned too, especially after noticing that Sheena had pulled out ammo. She said she needed to load them. Apparently, the school shops sold Gatling ammo, and she was seriously impressed by their selection. When her brother asked what they were for, Sheena answered that she just couldn't wait to try them out. She suddenly whipped out her Gatling gun, and as soon as her brother noticed it, he tried to stop her. Natsuki and the others immediately went on alert, and just in time, they dodged as Sheena started firing wildly out of sheer excitement. Amane and Kaji were both thrown into panic. Torimaru and the others couldn't believe what they were seeing. What was wrong with that girl? They thought she had totally lost her mind. Sheena blushed, looking satisfied after smelling the smoke left behind from firing her gun. Even the scent of gun smoke, she said, was somehow fancier here in the city. Her older brother quickly apologized to everyone nearby, saying it was just an accidental discharge from his sister's gun. Still, Amane remarked that he remembered them now. Natsuki grew curious and asked who they were. Amane explained that they had been featured in the JCC newsletter before, a pair of twins who had graduated from the assassin school at Kansai Killing Academy. They had earned the highest scores ever recorded in the Academy's graduation exams. They were known as the Saionji twins. That got Natsuki wondering why they were at the JCC now. He grew suspicious of their intentions. Sheena, on the other hand, lit up in excitement upon hearing that they were famous. That meant she'd probably gain even more followers. Her brother questioned when assassins even started using social media. Sheena then asked curiously who it was they were supposed to kill. Her brother pulled out a sheet of paper and began searching through the list. He explained that their targets were individuals with deep ties to the Sakamoto store. But before he could finish naming them, Sheena interrupted, saying who even cared about the specifics. Wouldn't it be more exciting if they ended up killing as many people as possible? Her brother grew irritated and snapped that she was always rushing things. Amane and the others were in complete disbelief that the Saionji twins from the Kansai Academy had actually shown up there. Torimaru asked what brought them to the JCC. "Let's see," said Sheena's older brother. Sheena then introduced herself to them as a member of the new JAA, and that their very first mission was to kill them. That left the group completely stunned. Natsuki, however, had already expected it. His suspicions had been correct all along. Even so, Sheena's brother tried to calm her down. He said they needed to explain things first. They knew that the group had hacked into and shut down the distributed weapons, and that entire operation had cost a fortune, which made their boss extremely angry. "I see," Natsuki responded. So they had come there to target him. The man hadn't expected Natsuki to be too hasty. But there was still one way to survive, he claimed. All they had to do was reveal Sakamoto's current location. If they did that, both Natsuki and the JCC would be spared. Natsuki, meanwhile, wondered to himself whether they hadn't yet realized that Sakamoto was already on his way to the JCC. Mafuyu then spoke up and asked why they were acting on their own. He asked his big brother if it wouldn't make more sense to just kill them right then and there. Shina was confused by the comment, and in her frustration, she suddenly rushed at Mafuyu and kicked him square in the face. The impact was so strong that he went flying straight into the wall, cracking it on contact. She said that if he was going to underestimate Kansai, she would show him exactly his place and called him a bastard. Natsuki became worried for Mafuyu, while Torimaru hadn't expected her to be that fast. Meanwhile, because the incident had been caught on CCTV, an alert was triggered throughout the JCC, reporting that suspicious activity had been detected inside the facility. Intruders were suspected, so all students were ordered to return to their rooms. Teachers and staff were instructed to eliminate the intruders and began preparing their weapons. Shina's brother wore a look of growing irritation as the situation escalated, while Shina herself said that this was exactly what she wanted. Suddenly, the staff began sweeping the facility in search of the reported intruders, and once the twins were located, they were fully intent on killing them. As Shina turned around, the staff suddenly opened fire. Fortunately, her older brother managed to grab her head just in time to keep her from being hit by the incoming bullets. He commented that she's being way too careless and called her an idiot. Shina hadn't expected that. Her brother reminded her that the crappier the weapon, the more stray bullets hit, so she needed to be extra careful. Shina, clearly annoyed, pulled away from his grip and began moving on her own, which worried her brother. She then aimed her Gatling gun directly at the heads of the staff members and began gunning them down one by one. She shouted with delight as she blasted their bodies to pieces, even yelling out a loud Yahoo! The JCC staff called her a brat, but she told them that they were emissaries of the new JA. One staff member charged at her with a knife, but Shina grabbed his shirt and threw him aside. She declared that anyone who opposed them was opposing the highest authority. As the man flipped through the air, Shina aimed her Gatling gun directly at his head. Because of the sheer power of the weapon, the man's head exploded on impact, along with the wall behind him. As a result, both of them were flung into the cafeteria. Amine and the others became deeply concerned as they realized just how powerful that girl was. So that was the power of the number one from Kansai Academy. Suddenly, someone attacked. Mafuyu launched a kick aimed directly at her, but Shina blocked it with the head of her Gatling gun. Mafuyu threatened that he would kill her, but Shina simply challenged him to bring it on. On the other side, Shina's older brother didn't know what to do anymore. The situation had escalated far too much. Natsuki asked if he wasn't going to fight, and he responded that he had no intention to. He genuinely thought they would simply reveal Sakamoto's location. Then, suddenly, he asked if that was his younger sibling too. He commented that dealing with troublesome siblings was exhausting for both of them. But strangely enough, his concern for his own sister outweighed any anger he felt toward her. Natsuki took a moment to reflect on that, while Shina had already choked Mafuyu. Shina told him he sucked and mocked how shallow the skill level in Tokyo was. She then told her brother that they should wrap things up, grab some souvenirs, and head back. Worry was evident on her brother's face, so Shina asked him what was wrong. He scanned the area and wondered aloud where the man beside him had gone. Natsuki then replied that indeed, having a younger sibling really is nothing but trouble. Using his invisibility suit, he concealed his presence and moved into position behind Shina. Shina didn't see it coming when she was suddenly hit out of nowhere, while Natsuki rescued his brother. Shina was thrown backward and shouted that some ghost, had hit her. Her older brother warned her to check behind her, but it was too late. The JCC staff had already been waiting and were poised behind her. They bound her with rope and successfully captured her. One of the staff, holding a blade, told her not to underestimate the teachers at JCC. He added that they would teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. See, her older brother commented. This was why he always told Shina not to let her guard down. In an instant, he moved with incredible speed and beheaded every teacher who had restrained his sister with no effort at all. Even on his own, he brought down a large number of enemies in the blink of an eye. Natsuki's eyes widened at the sight of what had just happened. Even Torimaru was shaken and hadn't expected it. Both Kaji and Amane were stunned, thinking to themselves how unpredictable the movements of that man were. He then asked Sheena if she could still stand, and she replied that she could. In everyone's mind, the same thought echoed. His strength was absolutely insane.